Hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of Rostie Talks. My name is Tyler Blackwell. I'm joined here today by Jim Latimer of Service Path. Now Jim, would you mind just telling us a little bit about what you do for a living?
Sure. Service Path is a company I just joined recently. They're actually based in Dubai and London, England. They were started a few years ago by a couple of English and Canadian expats that had been CTOs at technology companies in a number of countries in the Middle East and in Europe. They realized at these companies where they worked, they were technology service companies, and they realized that there was a growing issue around being able to get accurate quotes and proposals out to customers in a timely fashion. It would take sometimes days or weeks to do this. A lot of the time the quotes would be inaccurate, or they would not be complete. They'd be missing key pieces of technology or key parts of the solution. So they built a platform called Service Path that essentially accelerates the time to quote, and it manages installed base, so customers that have currently engaged one of our clients for their services be able to keep track of everything they're currently engaged for, when they're under contract, when they come under renewal, and it would allow salespeople to renew these subscriptions and these services. So
okay.
That's essentially the platform. And I just started in September.
Great. Now, with most of your work being done overseas, what are some of the benefits and sort of some of the detriments to doing a lot of your service with different clients overseas?
Sure. The number one problem and the most obvious problem is time zones. So, I'm dealing with one of the partners is currently in Dubai. He's moving back to Canada with his family in March, I think. But in the meantime, he's 9 hours ahead with our daylight savings time. So it's difficult. It means I'm up really early, and I'm not a morning person under any circumstances. The other partner has just moved back to England, so he's just outside of London. He's 5 hours ahead, which is a little more manageable. But usually I wake up to 40 or 50 emails and Slack messages and everything else, and I spend my day, as you've seen, on calls. So time zone's probably the biggest. There's definitely some cultural localization, business culture issues to contend with. What's funny for me may not be funny for somebody else in the world. So I have to be a little careful. I have some experience with international business, but it just means just treading carefully and sticking to the point and sticking to the business time. So.
Now, you mentioned that you'd been in the industry for some time now. What inspired you to get into this particular industry in the first place?
It's funny. I just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and I described it as I'd been working in the mines in the Yukon for 20 years, and now I'm selling shovels to miners.
Okay.
So managed services is essentially a part of the technology services industry where technology experts help customers. They manage the processes, they manage the services, they manage the products. So if you buy a server, a managed server is a server that comes with a service package where a technology expert, a sysadmin, will help look after that service. They'll do that server. They'll do the patching, and they'll do upgrades, and they'll do monitoring, and if it breaks, they'll fix it. So I've been in managed services probably since 2001. I used to own a managed service company that was acquired by a data center company, and I worked there for a while. And then in the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, I just started doing freelance business consulting, helping technology startups, internet startups, with an emphasis on managed services and on technology infrastructure, because that was where I came from. So this summer, I had known Service Path. I had introduced them to one of my clients a few years ago. They approached me and said they needed somebody like me that had a bunch of experience with managed services and a bunch of experience with technology service providers and resellers, and I had known them, and I respected the company and liked the product and used the product and brought it to customers. So that's where I joined them. So that's how I got into it.
Great. Now, with being in the industry for the better half of nearly 2 decades now, are there any technological advancements that have made your job either easier or harder to do, for that matter?
Well, yeah, both. The as the internet, so we'll talk about it just as the internet and the web, right? So I kind of started in the web when the web started, probably 95. I guess it started in 94, the web, right? The internet's been around since the 70s, but I got involved in the web very, very early on, and so it's matured as a collection of technologies, right? So and a collection of technology businesses and other service businesses. So as time goes by, definitely there's a lot of advancements that are really helping. You know, things like Slack, Skype is still you know, I use it, you know, hourly. You know, hosted platform software as a service as a business model has really come into its own. So signing up for Google Apps, or we use Office 365 at ServicePath. You know, not having to worry about installing Exchange servers or managing email servers and dealing with data backups. You know, we use Dropbox for everything. It's automatically replicated. It's automatically versioned. So all of the files, you know, if I lose a computer, which I did recently, I was up and running in half an hour. I installed Dropbox, I installed Office 365, and I have everything.
Right.
Slack and Skype, and I'm good to go. So definitely the advancements in terms of technology services and software as a service has really helped a lot. Now on the flip side of things, things that everything's become more complex when it comes to technology.
Right.
So you know, driven by, you know, international business and the need for scalability. You know, you're going to launch a software as a service product of your own. You could be looking at, you know, 1 billion potential customers as opposed to, you know, a couple dozen million.
Yeah.
So the markets have grown. Access to those markets have become easier, and some of the negative things that come with it. You know, you don't have 4 competitors in your town. Right? You have 4,000 competitors worldwide.
Right.
So access to eyeballs, you know, you can't just put an advertisement in a newspaper or a magazine or pay for a billboard. You now need to understand social media. You now need to understand where your customers go online as well as in the real world to get in front of them so that they know who you are. So that's become a lot more complex. And then there's a whole bunch of issues around security and privacy. That's, you know, probably the biggest intricacy with doing international business is dealing with cross-border data delineation and cross-border privacy concerns. So, you know, what's legal here is not necessarily legal in the U.S. or particularly in Europe, right? When it comes to customer data, personal information, what you're going to do and how you're going to store that information. So, it's more complex. There's more rules and laws around it. You know, in the 90s, we just did whatever we wanted, right? Like, yeah, we just made it up as we went along.
Right.
Now there's laws and there's governance around it, so it's a little more complex.
Now, with all of that complexity, you found a way to create your work atmosphere in a very dumbed down, very intimate to yourself type of an atmosphere. You chose to go in a co-working desk as a part of a business center where you have a dedicated space to yourself, but it's among reps from all types of different companies and industries. Why is it that you found that a co-working atmosphere would be the best fit for yourself?
Well, in the past, I have leased my own space, right? So the companies that I've worked at or owned in the past, we had our own space and we had to deal with it. And if it's, you know, it's one thing I decided after the last company I wasn't going to do that again. You know, in the case of, you know, owning a data center company, something that's a little bit different, right? So that's you know, important to have your own facilities, but you know, in the case of having an office, it's too much work to manage an office as a business, and having facility people and worrying about every little thing, and the heat's not working, and you know, so I realized that you know, being in a space where somebody else is looking after it is the direction I wanted to go in. So I did some research and found that it really wasn't that much more expensive than having, especially when factoring in the kind of the total cost of leasing my own office space and looking after it. It actually, I think I'm coming out ahead. So, you know, the atmosphere that I'm getting here is kind of an unexpected bonus. So there's an energy in the office. There's great people in the office. If I had rented my own space, essentially right now I'd be sitting there by myself.
Right.
So I was working at home. I was having a problem juggling my work life and my private life. I was working way too much, or I wasn't working at all.
Not
So
enough, right.
there was no real happy median at all in there, right? So I found that even when I was getting my own me time, I was looking over at my desk and I was seeing a pile of work, and all I would think about is, you know, how much work I was not doing because I was watching a movie. Or if I was working, I would see my TV, or more frequently my fridge, and go, that's where I should be right now. So I realized I needed to get out of that environment. I needed to create a separation between my personal life and my work life. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I came here, and the people are great. The energy's great. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Everyone's got but they're all moving towards this similar goals, right? The missions are very similar for everyone, right? They're trying to build successful businesses here, and some of the people are suffering the same pains, and it's things that we can talk about and have conversations about. If I have a rough call, and I can get off my call and joke around with the people around me, or grab a coffee, or take a walk around a nice, clean, warm office, and not have to worry about it. So it's nice.
Good. So how is it that you heard about the Rostie Group in the first place?
Actually, my neighbor. So my neighbor has been familiar with Rostie Group. I'm not sure if he was ever in here, but he definitely knows a lot of the people in here. And so I had mentioned to him about the issues I was facing. And he works from home. He's a realtor, and he suggested that I meet with you guys and see if you can help, and it just kind of went from there. That was this summer, and it just kind of snowballed.
Good. Is there anything that you could recommend to somebody who works on their own, or is in an ideal situation starting their own business?
Yeah.
Just some helpful tips in how they can get that everyday work grind to make it feel as though they're able to balance out that personal life and work life. Is there anything that you found over your time here that has been really able to help you out?
Scheduling my time. I have a tendency to want to get a lot done. I have a tendency to want to go home having cleaned my plate. The problem is I'm not really great at putting something on my plate at the beginning,
right,
so that I know it's clean at the end. So essentially everything's on my plate, so when I leave at the end of the day, my plate's rarely clean because there's not enough hours in the day. So what I've been teaching myself is setting goals in the morning, setting objectives for the day. What do I really want to get done? What are the one or two things that I have to get done today? What are the 3 or 4 things that I'd like to get done today, but I'm not going to get upset if I don't get them done, and use that to plan my day. So if I spend a lot of time on calls, as you've seen. It's very easy to spend so much time in meetings that I don't actually get anything done, right? Except lots of meetings. So sooner or later, that's just going to pile up, and one of these meetings is going to be a meeting to discuss why I'm not getting anything done.
Right.
So scheduling time for me to execute on what I've committed to in these meetings, or follow up on what others have committed to in these meetings, is absolutely critical as well. So if I'm going to work 8 or 10 hours, 11 hours in a day, and spend 4 of them on meetings, then I'd better make sure I block out that time in my calendar in order to get it done. So that would be my advice to anybody, actually.
Right.
But working in co-working space, it's I may be surrounded by great people, but I'm still on my own. Yeah. And I'm still accountable to people on other continents, and to customers all over kind of this hemisphere anyways, to get things done. And it's easy to lose sight of that. So yeah, the calendar is probably the number one thing to do that.
Great. Well, listen, Jim, I appreciate having you on. I know you've been up since the early morning this morning, working with your clients overseas. Yep. So I will sign off by thanking you very much for being on the show.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah.
And you can look forward to the next Rostie Talk coming up. Thank you.